I always wanted to serve on a jury.
I'm really super excited to be here, so I really appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Creating this whole trial, Daddy.
I want to give a big shout out to the 13th Juror podcast and Brandy.
Yeah, I applaud you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
That every time you run into Phil Barber, you should reach for it.
And then I just looked to the jury, and it's sort of like, look.
I was in the eye of the storm, and you guys were watching the storm.
Hey, if your porter works, come pop in and say, hey, want some coffee?
You are a ray of sunshine, and I love what you've done with your YouTube channel.
Sup, players? Hello. I was not planning on going live today. However, I just saw that there's an interview with one of the jurors. And before I go get back in the pool, I wanted to watch it with y'all. It's like 10 minutes. And she's toddling around the jury chairs. I wanted to watch it with y'all. Apparently, one of the jurors did an interview with TMZ. So we're about to watch it together because I was about to watch it and I was like, you know what? I went through this with all of my besties, all of my jurors. So we're going to watch it together and see what he has to say. Oh, I appreciate that. Give everybody a second to get in here. I haven't watched it yet. I started to, and I was like, nope. Gotta wait on my folks. So we're about to watch it together. Are we ready? All right, I'm scared to know what they say.
Jason, the jury found Karen Reed not guilty on murder and manslaughter. Was it because they had reasonable doubt or because they thought she was innocent?
So I think for the jurors, there's a mix of some people think that she was definitely innocent, and the other people, there was a lot of reasonable doubt, at least to where we didn't want to convict her.
That's really interesting. So could you give me a breakdown there? Roughly what percentage of the jury felt she was innocent?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think that she was innocent. It's hard to tell exactly what people think deep down. There was a lot of things thrown at us, of evidence. So it's hard to tell what's really.
So you say in your head she was innocent. Does that mean you think she was framed by people inside that house?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to John. Really, I was only presented a limited scope of what happened at the night, and I could only base my opinion off of the evidence that was shown in the courtroom. So,
okay, isn't that kind of what we all said? Isn't that like what we all said about how like they're given very little information and we don't know what happened? Smart answer.
I don't really know if there was a cover-up or not. I know that's the big conspiracy about it, but I don't really know. All I know is that there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
Yes.
Whether they were deliberate holes or not deliberate holes, it's kind of hard from me sitting back to know that, what actually happened.
So what was the feeling of the jury? Because Alan Jackson and the other lawyers raised the issue that she was framed by cops and that they would have turned that house upside down if they really wanted to do an honest investigation, and that he was not hit by a car. He was attacked in that house, bitten by a dog, and then put outside to frame
Not all of it.
her.
I fell asleep.
Did people on the jury, or some of them, buy that argument?
I think some of them bought that argument. It's just hard to tell, though, because whether or not we think that there was malicious intent, we were only presented with the facts that they didn't go into the house. So,
yeah,
there's an example of reasonable doubt. So, like, there's other examples of reasonable doubt. So even if you want to completely buy into the theory or not, that wasn't what we were tasked with. We were tasked with finding, convicting, or deciding on this person's fate based on the proof and the evidence that the Commonwealth was able to present. And there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
Yet you went many steps beyond that because you say, in your view, she was innocent. What compels you to think that?
Well, one thing that I think that compels me is we did a lot of review of the tapes, and it seemed to me that the videos that we could see from the car after the alleged incident happened, that when we could see the taillight, it was lit up red where it shouldn't just have been red.
Okay, see, that's what we said, right? That's what we were saying about how when you look at that taillight, it's lighting up red. And pointing that out in the closing arguments was smart.
So that leads to me a conclusion of, well, how come it's red in this video after the alleged, collision happened, and then it's not. It doesn't have any red pieces where it should be red.
So, in other words, you do not believe that SUV made contact with John O'Keefe?
I don't believe that the SUV collided with John O'Keefe.
What was the initial vote with the jury when you first took your vote?
We didn't do an initial straw poll. The judge recommended to us in the courtroom that is not a good way to do it. We broke down, what we did is we broke down each charge, and we went from top to bottom and discussed everything thoroughly, and did our best to do right by the Karen Reed and the Commonwealth.
Was there a division initially?
Yeah, there was a division.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
But that's what we're there to deliberate and talk about all the evidence. There was 2 months of us sitting there, them throwing all this information at us absorbing the information, going home, thinking about it, reviewing it in our heads, and we get to the deliberations, and now we have an opportunity to discuss. Some people went into the deliberations and they were still unsure after two months, and that makes sense because there was a lot of things going on. There's a lot of information. How much can you weigh one thing or another thing over,
Yeah. What about jurors who felt initially she was guilty? Were there any of them?
Yeah, there were a few jurors that think that had thought that initially when they went into the deliberations, that was their standpoint, and that's what we were there to do, to talk through all that and bring up every single piece of evidence. Is there
Jessica Machado saw this interview and said that this is one of the jurors that she saw. She said this is real.
An angle of reasonable doubt to where we're not really sure. Like, are you really sure? Are you 100% or are you 99.9%? If you're that 99%, we can't convict you.
What brought the ones who felt
I'm on
she was
YouTube,
guilty
on my channel,
over to the not guilty side? Was there anything in particular that seemed to resonate with them?
It's hard to tell from my position. You'd have to ask them about it. But in my opinion, I think it was just due to the poor investigation. There's just too many holes. And, it's hard to prove that the collision happened. So
y'all, is this not what we have been saying all along? It feels so good to actually hear that they were paying attention and that they weren't just like, well, she was drinking and he was there and she was there, so she's probably guilty, so we should just vote guilty. Oh my gosh. To have an actual
if there's reasonable doubt that happened or that there may have been foul play, if there's room for that, then it's hard to come to a guilty verdict.
What happened when the jury initially said they had a verdict and then said, oops, no, we don't. And then 15 minutes later, they said, oh, we do. What happened there?
Oh
That
yeah.
actually is kind of interesting. So the envelope, it was sealed and it's locked away. It'll never be looked at. But on everything on that initial slip was the same as the slip that was presented.
Oh, interesting.
But why did they pull it back?
The pulling the back was for the OUI charge.
The
There was-
driving under the influence, essentially, drunk driving.
Yes, driving under the influence. We in our deliberations, we had decided there was enough evidence and proof that she was driving under the influence. And
I bet because of those clips.
How did the defense do? How did the lawyers do, in your view? Her lawyers.
For her lawyers specifically, I think they all did. I think that all the lawyers on both sides did a really good job. They presented their case as well.
The police, you say the investigation was poor. The defense said it was more than poor. It was corrupt, and they pointed to the lead detective who had been fired, didn't testify in your trial. Did that have an impact? And did you think it was a corrupt police investigation?
Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I wasn't there. There was just there was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt. I think they could.
Okay. I love that he's like, I don't know. We don't have enough information to know this thing or the other. We don't have enough information to know if this thing is true and this thing isn't. If, she actually hit him or if there actually was a corrupt investigation. We just know that the investigation was messed up. The evidence isn't enough to be able to know anything. And that's all they need to know. This is exactly what a juror should be doing. You don't have to solve everything. You don't have to come to firm decisions on everything. You just have to decide if you can, if you believe that they have 100%, or beyond a reasonable doubt proven their case. I love that he's not feeling like he has to take one side over the other. It's just about following the jury instructions. That's really good.
Could have checked some boxes or done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that there was any corruption going on. But do I know that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Reed? Absolutely not. There was not.
Fair to say that your view was that her SUV did not make contact with O'Keefe, therefore she did not kill him, but you don't know how he died.
I would say that's fair to say. I don't know how John O'Keefe died, and I do not believe that there was a collision between the SUV and John O'Keefe.
I want to know too if they know about the FBI.
Did all of the hoopla around the case, the people outside, did it give you comfort in reaching a verdict like this, that you saw there was a community behind your point of view, or was it irrelevant?
Honestly, that made the pressure a lot harder, and it did not give me comfort. It made it a lot harder to block out everything and come to a decision.
Why did it make it harder?
It made it harder because all of the eyes are on us. We were told we're the most important people in the courtroom, and they keep us away from the crowds of people in the front of the courthouse. But we do see them, and I don't think that having all those people swayed me to go either way. We were only tasked with looking at the evidence. We were 12 jurors. We had to back up how we felt in this. For our decision, and we couldn't let any outside factors, her punishment, we couldn't factor any of that. We had to look at the evidence that was presented to us, absorb it, really understand it, and see if there's any reasonable doubt. And there was.
What are we thinking? How are we feeling? I think those are great answers. I think that it really does show that he was paying attention to, like you said, what they were tasked to do. And, and yes, and $400,000 just flushed down the drain with blue paint. I know, TMZ, but also these jurors don't know who's actually been covering this case. And also TMZ probably pays them a lot, and I'm not going to do that. So interesting to hear, though. It feels really good to hear how he answered those questions is how a juror should be answering those questions. It's how a juror should be doing things. A normal person who did the job that he was asked. I think that's great. Mary said, I'm late. Did you celebrate, Brandy, or sleep? Both. We didn't really celebrate. We went to like this really cool little English pub not far from our house, and I had 2 beers and a burger, and then came home and passed out. I tried to watch the Proctor thing, but I didn't make it. I don't even think I made it halfway through before I fell asleep. So I think we're going to go out for a nicer like celebration tonight. I was working on the podcast episode a little bit, the final Conspiracy in Canton podcast. Crazy, right? After 50, this will be the 58th episode, Conspiracy in Canton. If I was a taxpayer, I'd be furious about that $400,000 and all the other tax dollars wasted. Think about this too, y'all. Hank Brennan has to live with the fact that Lally did a better job than him. So there's that. You're late. You're late for a very important date. It's so very interesting. I hope that he will do interviews with the people who know all the right questions that we want, I 100% agree with you. And that's the thing about doing interviews with somebody like TMZ versus doing interviews with somebody like, those of us who have actually covered the case so in depth for so long. I want to know about the FBI. I want to know what they thought about blue paint. I want to know what they thought about Jen McCabe. I want to know what they thought about Bev. I want to know what they thought about Barros. I want to know what they thought about Hank Brennan's behavior on cross-examination during the defense witnesses. I want to know all those things. Thank you. I got to sleep in. I say sleep in. I mean, I think I was up at 7 or like 6:45. But for me, that's, that's sleeping in. And I went to bed early. What time did Proctor's thing come on? Or 2020 come on? 8? And I fell asleep before the end of the first half. And me and Sydney are about to eat Chipotle. And then I'm going to get in the pool. I'm going out tonight. I'm just having I'm having a day. Just a day. I will follow the civil case. I will probably do some updates on that, as it goes, but I don't know about full podcast episodes, depending on what it has. Or probably little mini episodes. Am I going to miss it? No. I will miss seeing people passionate about justice, but we can do that in every case. I think that one thing about this case is it really shows you that there are always 2 sides to every story. And you can have the same batch of evidence and two completely different stories from it, which is something I've always said I thought was really interesting. And that has inspired me for what's to come. So you'll hear more about that soon. The grand finale is coming. English pub should have had fish and chips. They had fish and chips. Chat Daddy got bangers and mash, and that looked good too. But I just was in the mood for a beer and a burger. The most expensive OUI ever. Ever. What, if anything, will always prevail? Well, they only got people to hang on number 2 because there was no OUI only charge. I think they knew she was drunk and wanted to convict on something. I absolutely agree, which I think is why it was smart to add the OUI to the charges on this. I'm glad he did ask about the butt-dialed rehomed verdict, though, because I was really curious about that. But I would have more. I would have more questions. I would have followed up. He didn't ask. He didn't know the right questions to ask. He didn't. But I'm at least glad we got to hear from something. So, but that's a good point. That's a really good point. The blood alcohol witness for the Commonwealth was crossed by Lally. Oh, okay. All right, I gotta go. I just wanted to watch that with y'all. I gotta go. I love you all. I'll do a live tomorrow, and we'll have time to actually hang out.